This is gonna be a series I'm starting that's probably gonna be one of the most important on the Sussy Boy channel. Full disclosure, I am pretty sick, but I'm at the end of the sickness, so excuse me if I cough a lot. But it's also 12 at night, or 12 in the morning, I should say. But I know I wanted to get this done, so this is how we're going to do it. I decided to, I'm going to split up the 8 movies, do the first 2 in one video, 3 as one video, 4 as one video, 5 as one, 6 as one, and then 7 and 8, since they're both Deathly Hollows, I'll do together. Or maybe I'll do those apart. But I wanted to do do number 1 and 2 together because they're sort of smaller stories that aren't as important for the overall story of the series. More so the first one, which is very introductory and very sort of basic. And yeah, I'm gonna get into it, but let me drink some water first. So first, a little background. I haven't watched these movies in about 4 years, and the reason will be clear to certain somebody, but I couldn't really bring myself to watch them despite the fact I wanted to for quite a long time, because I do love these movies, but I don't know, I didn't have the heart to watch them again, and I recently just sort of pushed myself to do it, and I'm really enjoying it, and I thought, you haven't really made a Harry Potter video, for obvious reasons. I mean, I talked about it on Suscast for sure, but I never made like a full-on review because I didn't watch them again. And I'm going to be like doing, maybe at the end of my Deathly Hollows review, or at the beginning of the video, I'll do a ranking for the whole series. I think that'll be good. So yeah, let's get into it. We're going to start with Sorcerer's Stone. And I got my IMDb page open because if you know my channel, you know that I rely heavily on IMDb. So obviously this is written by J.K. Rowling, who was, she has a great personal story of writing this, and it lifted her out of poverty. Stars the 3 characters, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, played by Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, as well as a really good supporting cast of really nice actors and actresses. Particularly people like Richard Harris for Dumbledore, Maggie Smith, McGonagall. I'd say most importantly would be Alan Rickman as Snape. And then people like Robbie Coltrane, Hagrid. He died recently. But even people like the Dursley family, who are Harry's foster parents, were really well cast. I'm sorry about my voice. It's maybe not the best idea to do this right now, but it's okay. So, this movie does a lot of things really right, and both for the first 2 movies, huge credit has to be given to Chris Columbus, who was the first director of the first 2 films. And I actually believe he was like producer on all of the films. But let me check that here. Was he producer on everything? No, he was producer on the first 3 and director on the first 2. It's really embarrassing. I keep coughing. But anyway, let's just say the first movie is very introductory. You get to learn about this poor boy named Harry Potter who's dropped off by these magical people, Dumbledore and McGonagall and Hagrid, on the doorstep of his aunt and uncle. And you just know that he's survived and his parents have been killed. And he's known as the boy who lived. And it's a very good opening with beautiful music and all that. And then it fast forwards like 10 years later, before his 11th birthday. And you get to meet his family, who's I would describe them as unloving and abusive towards him, although it's unclear why. And his whole life changes, where basically he starts receiving letters, letters from Hogwarts, where he's summoned to go get an education in magic. So I guess this is like the stereotypical, and I don't say that in a bad way, but the archetypal hero's journey, where the hero leaves home and goes out into the wilderness and sort of learns about his place in the world and makes a name for himself, sort of like Luke Skywalker is a famous example of that. It's a very good intro. And basically Hagrid, the family flees. They refuse to let him go, but Hagrid tracks him down, takes Harry away, and he gets to go sort of prepare for school. He goes to Diagon Alley, gets his wand, all that stuff. I'm not going to summarize it too much. My voice is kind of messed up. But surmise to say, he meets his friends, Ron and Hermione, great chemistry. And the direction and the music and the acting and all of this stuff really make this... it really makes like the world so warm and beautiful. And you really like want to be with the characters, and it's always a good thing with a franchise where you like want to be in their world, and it's sort of like the perfect and most cool school experience you could think of. And then you're introduced to people like Snape, who immediately Harry has an adversarial relationship with, and it's suspected that all these bad things that go on during his year at school are being controlled by Snape. But as time goes on, that becomes not clear. And someone's trying to steal the Sorcerer's Stone, which is this magical object that gives you immortality. I'm skipping over a lot of things, but I'm kind of suffering here, guys. Things go on. And they go into the chamber where actually, no, one thing I want to talk about that I really like about this movie, this one scene with the Mirror of Erised, which is this magical mirror that Harry looks into. He stumbles upon it one night with his invisibility cloak that his father had left for him, but Dumbledore gave him anonymously. And he stumbles upon this mirror, and I really like this. He looks into it and he sees his parents like smiling and putting their hand on his shoulder. And then he brings his friend Ron down. And Ron, he's like, Ron, look at this. If you look into this, you can see my parents. They're alive. But Ron sees himself like as like, head boy, and I think like he won the Quidditch World Cup or whatever, stuff like that, like achievements and wealth and power. And then later, Dumbledore finds Harry staring into the mirror, and he says, like, I'm having it moved because men have lost their minds looking into this, because it gives you, in certain cases, things you can never have, like dead parents come back to life. And basically it's a mirror of your deepest desires. And in a way I like it a lot, because I'm thinking, like, what would I see? I do have lots of things that I desire. I think I know what I most desire. If you look at the history of my life, I would say that there's one thing I always wanted since I was a kid that I would probably see. But I was thinking, like, what would you see in that? And then also I was thinking about how pure it would be to see your parents, see your, like, dead parents as a child. And like, I like the scene where he's just staring into it, and Dumbledore comes in and says, like, people have lost their minds looking into it. I think that what I would see would be pure. Hopefully. I think you would hope for it to be pure, because things that aren't pure can be achieved. And how should I say this? Things that are not pure can be achieved, and you don't need to dwell over it. But things that are pure, they're more special if you desire them, I think. More noble, because everybody has dreams of, to varying degrees, but wealth and power, and I certainly have those desires more than anybody, I would say. But nobody really cares about that, and that's a good thing. There's nothing noble about it, for sure. And anyway, so they go into the various trial chambers where each of the characters have an opportunity to show their worth. Hermione shows her knowledge in the first task by getting Ron out of the sort of plant that's strangling him with a spell. Then Ron has an opportunity to show his chess skills when they win the game of Wizard's Chess. And then Harry passes a Quidditch trial. And then it's the last thing, which Harry faces alone, where he is confronted by Professor Quirrell, who has basically a parasite of Voldemort on the back of his head. Sorry, just drinking water. And basically, the Mirror of Erised is down there. Dumbledore had it moved down there as the final trial, I guess. And Quirrell, hey, this kind of actually ties in beautifully of what I was saying about noble and ignoble desires, but in a different context. So Quirrell looks into the mirror and sees himself holding the stone. Harry does the same and sees himself holding the stone, because he wants to prevent Voldemort from getting it. Yet the stone appears in his pocket, and he basically defeats Voldemort / Quirrell, because basically Quirrell can't touch him, because Voldemort can't touch Harry because he's protected by his mother's sacrificial love. And basically the film ends with Harry talking to Dumbledore, and he's saying, like, only someone that wanted the stone but never would use it could get it in that moment. And yeah, so that's the end of that movie. And I would say, just as a preliminary rating, it's definitely like my least favorite Harry Potter film. I would give it like an 8.4 or an 8.5. And I think after you watch it a second time, you probably like it more than the first time. It's a very, very much an introductory story. It's very simple. The plot is very simple. But the good thing about the movie is it introduces a lot of concepts, places, characters, relationships, like with like with Snape, being that of like a rival to Harry. But also it creates this weird thing with Snape where you don't know if he's good or bad, because on one side he's very cruel to Harry, but he's also, it's said he's one of the professors protecting the stone, and then you realize he isn't the one stealing the stone, even though you feel like he is throughout the movie. Then you get the relationship with Dumbledore, which is like the wise kind of protector of Harry. That's like, I wouldn't really say necessarily his father, but kind of like a grandfatherly figure. Then you have the two friends who are very unique and have their own sort of appeal and likability and all that. Then you got Hagrid, who's like this older friend character. Who else do we have here that I missed? You have all the other professors, like McGonagall, who's great. And then you got Harry's family. You introduced, the family dynamic where it's the boy who's abused and neglected and unloved. And then he goes into this new world where he's the opposite of neglected. Especially, he's the most famous person in the world, and his whole life changes. Sort of like a dream in a way. I think I heard a story one time, or a theory, where it's like, it's a fan theory where people say Harry Potter was just imagined by the boy living under the cupboard, or under the staircase, sorry, to like make his life more bearable. He created a world where he was, the the most famous wizard in the world, and he had all these special abilities and stuff. It's kind of sad in a way, but true. I like it. And yeah, so that's the first movie. Very simple, but good. So I'd say like 8.5 out of 10. Okay, number 2. I would actually give this movie like an 8.7. I like this movie a lot. It's definitely simple. I don't really say that as a bad thing. It's just not as complex as the other movies. It's not as simple as the first one, but damn. I'm sorry. Yep, so this is Richard Harris's last movie as Dumbledore before he dies. And he was a really good Dumbledore. I really enjoy him. So this film starts up with Harry has been given a little bit more freedom. He's been given a room in his home. He's not living under the stairs anymore. And he's basically not getting any mail from his friends. And he thinks they've like forgotten about him. And then Uncle Vernon has a business meeting downstairs. And he tells Harry, like, go upstairs, pretend you don't exist. And then a house elf apparates in his room named Dobby. And Dobby tells him, like, he cannot go back to Hogwarts. He's in danger. And that he's been taking all his letters. And then Dobby, like, basically throws a cake on the business client. And basically, Harry's locked in his room, and then a flying car flown by Ron comes and picks him up, and they escape. And it's a really good scene. It's very fun. And they try to go to Hogwarts, and the door is locked. The platform 9 3/4 is locked because of Dobby. So they fly to school, and they crash the car in the Whomping Willow, and they get in trouble from Snape. God, why do I keep saying Snake? And lots of things happen in this movie. It's basically the Chamber of Secrets has been opened, and there's an heir to Slytherin. And then basically you're finding out this whole mystery where it's been opened once before, 50 years ago. And it's sort of like this unraveling mystery of how to get there, why was it opened, who opened it, and all this stuff. And it's actually a really good movie and very interesting. It's a good mystery. We get to learn more about the characters and all this stuff. And it has like lots of little intriguing things, like the fact that the snake, the basilisk, if it looks at you, you die instantly. But none of the people are dying. They're just being petrified because everyone has indirectly looked at the snake, like through a reflection of water or through a mirror. And it's lots of cool stuff like that. And I'm doing a really bad job of explaining it, but I'm trying to get through this. Things go on. Harry, Ron, and Hermione brew a Polyjuice potion to try to impersonate Draco's friends to see if Draco's the heir to Slytherin. And then the attacks increase throughout the year, petrifying more students, including Hermione. Most horribly, a message written on the wall declares that Ginny Weasley has been taken into the chamber where her skeleton will lie forever. And basically, Harry and Ron find the chamber, and Harry goes down there, and there's a really good scene where Dumbledore has been basically banished from headmaster at Lucius Malfoy's request through the governors of Hogwarts. And basically when Harry's down there, he's sort of saved by Dumbledore's Phoenix Fox, who brings down the Sword of Godric Gryffindor. And the significance of this is it proves like Harry's loyalty to Dumbledore, and also it reaffirms his he was rightly placed in Gryffindor, because a common theme of these movies is like Harry not knowing exactly who he is and like finding himself and making a name for himself and being insecure about his identity because he's sort of, he and Voldemort share a lot of qualities because of what happened to him. Voldemort just kind of like lives inside of him, which becomes more clear as time goes on. And Harry finds out that I should talk about the diary. Yeah, there was a diary of Tom Riddle, and that basically helps Harry understand what happened 50 years ago when the chamber was opened. And then he goes down there and he meets Tom Riddle, who reveals that he is the heir to Slytherin and that he is also Lord Voldemort 50 years in the past. So Harry actually destroys the diary down there, defeating Tom Riddle / Voldemort again. And everyone recovers, and basically it's revealed that Lucius Malfoy, Draco's father, slipped the diary into Ginny's cauldron at the beginning of the movie. And then Dobby reveals he's Malfoy's servant, and he was trying to protect Harry all year, And Harry sticks one of his old socks in the diary and hands it to Lucius, who gives it to Dobby, but inadvertently freeing his slave by presenting him clothes. And basically, that's the end of the movie. And then at the end of the movie, Dumbledore dispels Harry's fears that he could have been put into Slytherin rather than Gryffindor, where he tells Harry that it is his choices that define him, not his abilities, and that Harry could not have wielded the sword of Godric Gryffindor if he did not belong to that house. So I've done kind of a bad job of explaining this, I know, but it's a very intriguing mystery story, and a little bit darker. This is kind of almost like, it's funny how linear the darkness of Harry Potter goes up as you keep watching movies. So this is the first one that gets a little bit more dark, and then I would say the most serious film of the first three would be the third. It sort of gets more serious and a little bit more dark and mature. And we'll talk about number 3, which I actually watched twice. It's a really fantastic film. I'm really sorry that I'm coughing through this, but I gotta go to bed. I'm sorry. I hope that this has been a somewhat decent review. Suffice to say that the first 2 films are very well directed, and Chris Columbus gets a lot of credit for just building this world and making it really good and not over relying on CGI, like using real sets, like using a model for Hogwarts to make it look real. Just using it where it's necessary. And it really paid off. I think it looks really cool. Really cool music from John Williams. All this stuff, really well done. And the cast, really, really solid cast. And we're going to be talking a lot more about what I think about Harry Potter as it goes on, but this was my first kind of crazy review of the first 2 films. Thank you for sticking with me. Saucy Boy out.